My earphones are singing to me, Melissa.
What?
My earphones are singing to me, Melissa.
Okay. Is my Pandora... Ooh, that's bright. Is it my Pandora station or am I singing through the mic?
Yes.
Oh, the Pandora station. Yes, you may want to exit out of that. You can just close all the Internet Explorer stuffs. There is nothing important there. Alright, you guys are live!
Alright. Hi folks out there in internet land. Wow. We can talk normally. Anyway, welcome back to our regularly scheduled study group stuff. Anyway, this is a first degree study group. And as you can see, Lexi has yet to return. She will be with you next week. But for this week, we will do a brief recap of the two lessons we have already covered. We of course have covered Lesson 1, Magic, and Lesson 2, Cosmology. So in Lesson 1, we covered the theory of magic, in other words, what magic actually is. And what it comes down to is that magic is working with energy, whether we do it consciously or unconsciously. From the book here we have magic is the art of consciously focusing and controlling this all-pervasive energy, the pervasive energy that exists within the universe itself. So magic, therefore, would be, again, consciously manipulating the world around us on a astral level. Interacting with our higher self, which includes the top 4 chakras and planes of existence, our lower self coming together with the higher self. Also in the lesson, we were introduced to the practice of magic through such things as the Wiccan Rede, which can be summed up by saying, do as you will, but harm none. It means you can pretty much do anything you like, just don't hurt anybody, especially yourself. I'm just doing a brief thing, we'll go back and cover it a little bit more later. Further on we have the idea of practicing psychic hygiene, which means that we must consciously present an effort to protect ourselves from negative energies such as feelings of anger and depressed energies that could bring us down. That's why the idea of grounding and releasing is important. Grounding, the idea of getting grounding and releasing, the idea of getting the energy that you don't need and you no longer require away from you, to be recycled by the universe. I also went over the first exercises of the book, of the first degree, the idea of practicing good habits and the idea of actually learning how to ground and how to release, how to cleanse yourself, how to practice psychic shielding, and all that good stuff. And the lesson for, the ritual, or rather the spell for lesson 1 was the ritual bath, which we learned a tad bit about, which we can go over a little later on. Now that pretty much covers what we had for lesson 1. And into lesson 2, in cosmology, we went over such things as God, the universe, and everything. What exactly is the divine? That's what it came down to. The creation myth of the Irradian, or the Evangelo della Strega, that told us that chaos is genderless and gave way to the forms of the god and the goddess, allowing us to come into existence within the physical plane. And we also really learned a little bit about the chakras and the 7 planes of existence, 7 chakras. So learned a bit about the Mother Goddess, and Triple Goddess in particular. And the actual spell for the lesson was Manifesting Desire, how to manifest something you would like to see come to pass, as well as the first 3 energy exercises, which include exercising the chakras. So, now that we know what we covered, this is a brief recap, let's delve into them a bit more thoroughly. So as we go through, let me first just say that if there's any questions, anything you'd like to go over out there in the chat rooms, in the viewership, do indeed ask any and all questions you have. Today is merely a time to touch base, make sure we're caught up with what we need to do before we start lesson 3 next week when Lexi returns. So, let's delve right into lesson 1, magic. Now, in the theory of magic, we learned the concept of as above, so below, which tells us that just as we live in the vast universe filled with countless stars, so too do whole universes of a different nature exist within us, within the microscopic makeup of our being, worlds within worlds. In other words, what happens within the small little section, how a human being operates, is pretty much how the divine operates. As above, so below. As without, so within. Everything influences everything else.
There's something Therese always says that I really like. That when you pray for yourself or do a spell for yourself, you're really doing it for the world. You know, if you're praying for peace within yourself, you're really praying for world peace.
Certainly one way of looking at it. Also, on a practical level, we learned a little bit about the electromagnetic energy, which holds the electrons and protons and the microscopic particles in place. So as we see that happening, all those particles remain in place to create us. Gravity keeps us and all the animals upon the Earth, and gravity further out into space. You have planets staying within their own little thing. So as above, so below, we see that worlds within worlds, expanding outward to the greater thing. Other ideas of how people perceive energy, we have the word chi, from chi or ki from both China and Japan, mana from the Polynesians, orenda, which is what the Iroquois refer to it as, od, which is the German or Norse Germanic way of looking at energy, and my personal favorite, Star Wars, the Force.
Woot.
But contemporarily, we refer to it merely as psychic energy. So as I touched upon earlier, magic in and of itself is the art of consciously focusing and controlling the all-pervasive energy, the force, the mana, the prana, the chi that exists out there. Magic, practicing magic, is focusing on something, actively trying to do something with energy. Now it is true that human beings will unconsciously practice magic, sometimes just by thinking really hard. If you are someone who is thinking, oh, I'm going to have a bad day today, it's going to be awful because it's raining and this, that, and the other thing, and it's just jammed right there in your brain, you might not be actively casting magic, but unfortunately you are, because you're probably going to have a bad day. I know it's happened to me once or twice. And we also touched upon the higher and lower selves. Now that is separated by, well, we have the 7 planes of existence. From the bottom to the top, we have physical, emotional, mental, astral, the egoic, monadic, and then the divine. There is a veil between the emotional and the astral. Now the lower self is the physical, emotional, and mental, and the higher self is the astral, egoic, monadic, and the divine. So the act of practicing magic is indeed from our mental selves going into and touching upon the astral self. We as human beings exist, so therefore we are in the physical plane. We as human beings feel emotion, happy, sad, all that. So it's fairly easy. And in the mental plane, how much do we think? Thoughts. The all-pervasive idea of how we're thinking. Logic. So from those 3 planes of existence, practicing magic is actively trying to touch the astral plane, touch your higher self. Before I go on, is there anything out there as far as questions are concerned? No, nothing. Well, that goes into the idea of the practice of magic, where we touched upon the idea of the Wiccan Rede, which can be summed up merely by saying, do as you will, but harm none. The practice of karma, sometimes we talk about it as the threefold law, the power of 3 shall come back to the meaning And what you do will come back to you. It's as simple as that. Sometimes it will come back to you 3 times over. However, the Correllian idea is that if you do something negative and you must learn your lesson from it, it will happen 1, 2, 3 times until you learn it. But if you don't learn it at 3 times, it will continue on. Same thing works for positive energy, though. If you're putting positive energy out there, it will come back to you 3-fold or more. So, practice of magic has everything to do with karma. That brings us into psychic hygiene, which is the process of releasing excess energy or grounding. Meaning that if you are particularly hyped up about something, you are filled with energy, that's probably because you can't fall asleep. You need to get rid of extra energy. Ground it, release it, get rid of it from you. Which is a very important thing to do because it can block you if you do not get rid of the extra energy. So in the exercises, it taught us simple ways of visualization, which is just really imagining what we want to do. For instance, if we are trying to ground, sometimes people will picture roots coming from the bottoms of their feet going into the earth and just draining water that's unnecessary. Or sometimes it says we see this white light pass into our crown chakra down into our body, collecting all the grime that is inside of us, and it's just exiting out through our hands and through our feet to be used again. Visualization. You need to see it in your mind's eye.
I've kind of got a different one that I've actually been working with a little bit for grounding, and that's the image of a dragon, or myself as a dragon, blowing out fire, literally blowing off steam, just burning off all of the extra stuff. And that's one that's been working for me.
Any way that works, really. That's what I like to say. There is no, well, I wouldn't say there's no wrong way to do something, but it's certainly hard to find the wrong way to do something. We then also touched upon psychic healing.
Surprise!
Surprise! Surprise!
I got you a Christmas present.
Holy crap!
Well, more like museum presents.
Get over here! How did this happen?
Are we officially filming?
Yes!
Yeah, I knew I wasn't gonna make it in time for class.
You did! You did!
Hey
Hey guys! Lexi's here!
There we go. Everybody, this is my daughter Kendall.
Hi, Kendall! Nice to meet you.
There's your Ouija board back. I stopped by early to grab a Ouija board.
I'm Melissa, this is Al, that's Katrina, or Fox, or whatever we're calling her right now.
Fox, I'm on the screen.
On the screen.
Of course, I had to arrive in my best attire.
Dang.
Scoosh.
Scrooge, I won't pick you up in that.
Please don't. Okay. So, where are we?
We're recapping, we're just kind of doing a review of the last 2 chapters.
Good.
And we're passing it, honey.
We're back. Got my
Lexi,
problem.
I'm on the vacation until the 7th, honey.
Lexi, cross at the ankles.
Thank you.
All right. Well, anyway. Hi. So, where was I? Seriously, I forget. Where was I? Psychic shielding. That's what it was.
Shielding,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Very important stuff.
Yes. So. Take these off because I can't see anything I'm doing anyway. I don't like surprises. I hate surprises.
I see that.
Yeah.
There's not enough room in there. And we don't have any room.
Hear that all the way out there? I hate surprises. Can you tell?
That's alright, Crystal Rain hates me screaming into the microphone, so...
Hi, everyone.
How you doing? Okay. So, I was... Don't have a pocket. Going over lesson 1 and lesson 2 again as a bit of a recap. I guess didn't want to start lesson 3 without her coming back, but Now,
Maybe
Anyway.
we could ask some of the people in the chat room how they've sort of put these exercises into use.
yes, that is a good idea. Let's actually talk about the exercises first. So, again, as the book says right in here, the first exercises you will learn are two of the most important basic practices you should know: psychic shielding and clearing and releasing. These two techniques are the cornerstones of good magical practice, and their importance cannot be stressed too much. In future lessons, many other exercises will be given, but none are more important than these first two. That is to be stressed exponentially, importantly. If you do not clear and release, you could run into problems down the line. It's my personal opinion that psychic shielding is also necessary just for everyday practice in general, actually, life. Some people will disagree, but I believe psychic shielding helps to, well, you're not bombarded with this horrible negative. If you shield yourself psychically, you don't need to worry about all this horribleness entering into you. Yes, out there, what do we got?
Crystal Rain, explain why shielding yourself from things makes me physically ill.
Why shielding yourself from things makes her physically ill?
Yep. I'd never heard that one.
Well, could be shielding yourself from. Well, it's quite possible that she's accidentally blocking something that she needs. I'm not 100% familiar, but if I was to think about this logically, I would say that she could be accidentally preventing something positive that she needs inside. That can't get to where it needs to go. There is a block there, so she's probably shielding too much.
Or shielding from the wrong stuff.
Yes.
Shield from negativity and let positive love and light in.
Mm-hmm. Like attracts like. For instance, I've had the opposite experience. This when I started psychically shielding myself, I don't get ill anymore. Yeah. So it could very well just be a matter of not actively letting something in that needs to be let in, or accidentally blocking something that should not be blocked. That's going to require, I would say, would require meditation for you to figure out exactly what it is.
I think you're correct too.
Yeah.
A blockage like that, when you block energy, it can tend to cause anxiety, which gives you a very sick feeling physically. Manifested in the physical type.
Can be awful. It really can be awful.
If we think about the energy centers, they go in through your crown and then come out through your root, right? If you're blocking off either the in root or the out root, you're gonna get either if you're blocking the in root, you're not gonna get anything, and you're gonna like wither like a plant. And if you're blocking the out root, it's all gonna get built up and start popping out the top. So painful either way.
But in regard to psychic shielding, sometimes we pick up energy from other people without knowing we are doing so. Their moods or emotions may bleed over. The idea of spiritual empathy, picking up someone's emotions. That's why I like to stress psychic shielding, because who wants to feel the way the depressed person across the room is feeling? They obviously have their own negative energy and things to deal with, and the idea that it is going to bleed over onto me, well, is horrible. I don't want to share their negative. But at the same time, I don't want them to still remain negative. But we first and foremost must protect ourselves from this negative bombardment.
I find I work a lot with children, one in particular who has a lot of emotional problems. And I found on days when I become frustrated with him or start to feel very worn down, if I sit myself down for a moment and shield properly and sort of detangle myself from him and put a little psychic distance there, I can better help him deal with his problems.
It's always good to protect yourself or prepare yourself before working with somebody or something else. Now, we also have the idea of clearing and releasing, and the clearing and releasing of excess energy, is extremely important. It is important to do this before magical working so that your energy will flow freely. It is also important to do after a magical working so that the excess energy that may be left in your body will not cause you difficulties. Now, the idea of practicing clearing and releasing before you enter into a ritual context or magic context is so that you don't have the anxieties, the difficulties that you are carrying with you over the course of the day to block you from appropriately doing the work that you set out to do. Now, on the flip side, when you have done your magical workings and are all through, you must clear and release what you have called, because in context of spell working, one must first build up the energy, carry it, do the magical workings, and then release it so it goes down, but you are always left with excess. And excess is not a good thing. We must get rid of it and give it back to the universe so that it might be recycled for something effective, something worthwhile, something, well, that won't cause a block, that won't hurt you or somebody else. Before we go on again, is there anything out there?
Crystal just wants to add, extra has a place, it goes to the ground, at least that's where I send it.
Yes, precisely. Precisely. Now that brings us again to the spell for lesson 1, which was the ritual bath. I don't want to delve too far into it because we have indeed learned how to do it at some point. But what it comes down to is the idea of cleansing yourself will help you to release long-term blockages that you may or may not have had, and will help you live a better life, become a better you, I think. At least that's how I looked upon the ritual bath, is to look at things that I have carried in the past and then release them. So, if there's anything on the ritual bath, if there isn't, I will then continue on. Wonderful. The god for lesson 1 was Genius and Juno, which is just another way of looking at your higher self. Genius being masculine, Juno being the feminine. Depending upon who you are in this life, male or female, you have the counterpart within your higher self somewhere. You would have a Genius, I would have a Juno. Some people like to say, some people will subscribe to the belief that you don't have the polarity of what would be called a Genius for being a Juno for you. But no matter how you perceive it, that is your higher self. We all have a bit of the divine within us. Now, we went through a bit of the vocabulary words already, as above, so below. We of course have the aura, which is the field of spiritual energy around the body. Do as you will but harm none, grounding, higher self, touched upon karma. Now a key is something we use to help induce a shift of consciousness. Now a shift of consciousness, as I should have touched upon a little earlier, but didn't, a shift of consciousness in context of magic is when we shift virtually into the astral plane to perform magic. It's really weird that I'm sitting with 4 people and none of them are saying anything for the past 10-15 minutes.
You keep going. Cause more.
But there it is.
Well, we could talk about some examples of what we use as keys.
Yes, please.
Things like that. For me, fire has always worked really, really well. I mean, even before I was practicing this, I'd sort of get myself into a trance-like state sitting in front of a campfire. Something like that.
Water
Water.
is a big
Definitely.
one for me. Water, falling water, loaded with negative ions, great things.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very powerful for me.
Earth. Outdoors. Wilderness. Everyone's looking. You're sitting in the
We're
student
right
seat.
down
You
the line.
have to participate.
Yeah.
Earth. Yeah, Earth.
Anyway, that can bring us back into lesson 2, which is cosmology, which I like to think we covered rather extensively. We were present for some of them. Now, cosmology, oddly enough, is normally, well, not normally, but a lot of traditions in which choose to save cosmology for higher teachings. But thankfully, growing in belief is that cosmology is an integral part of growing religiously, growing spiritually. So therefore it should be presented early on, so that we might comprehend it as soon as we can. Now, first part of lesson 2 in cosmology was God, the universe, and everything. Now that can be a scary concept, especially because it is so vast. Well,
I always thought it was 42 personally.
the meaning of life, 42.
So it's 28.
You need to get me to read some Hitchhikers, hon.
Mhm.
Oh, I was thinking Discordia.
Oh.
Wait, it's 23 or 28. I'm not Discordian.
Anywho.
Alfred wants to take a nap, guys.
Deity, spirit, the universe, we all have different names for it. And that is actually part of the idea of Correllian cosmology. The idea that deity, spirit, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is much like the diamond. It has many facets, many different parts that culminate into a single thing, a single monad, if you will, a single divine something, whatever you want to call it. Now, that's where we go into the idea of a patron deity, a certain face of deity. For instance, I remember in various conversations we touched upon gods like Anubis, goddesses like Freya. Doesn't matter.
Hedris.
Or Discordia. Yes. Now, there's also the concept of universal deity, who came before, existed in time of chaos, which gave way to the splitting off of the god and the goddess, goddess coming first, in which the goddess is said to have fallen into being for the god. God being the Lord of the dance, the very manifestation of the physical. So we have these two ideas, the polarities of physical and ethereal, masculine and feminine, God and goddess, light and dark. So in order for the goddess to reconnect with the god, we have the idea of falling through the planes of existence. From the top we have divine, into the monadic, into the egoic, into the astral, into the mental, emotional, and physical. So the divine exists within all things. That's what it comes down to. Can be very easily explained within the Evangelo della Strega, or the Aradian, which was written, compiled by Charles Godfrey Leland, given to him by an old practitioner of witchcraft, Sicilian, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Italian witch Maddalena gave the Evangelo to Charles Leland. And the myth that is shared is very much the idea of the goddess falling into the physical. Well, let's begin at the beginning. So for aeons, primeval or universal deity thought and considered and wondered, and then out of herself, the first darkness, she divided herself. Into darkness and light she was divided. The god, her brother and son, herself and her other self, was the light, which the god then went out and did his own thing, pretty much. Became the physical, which he went through those 7 planes of existence, creating them, creating us, creating virtually one man's interpretation.
I think we discussed it actually that night. My struggle with the different broken down deities, I think, which I'm learning now, which is very interesting. I think I was more primitive, more doing my energy work directly with the universe, which in that type of concept, I think it works out well, because it would be more primitive. It would be, not male or female or black or white. It would just be kind of the base, and then in my mind it goes to where it needs to go. And as you said, at some point it may actually lead me to a specific deity.
It might, it doesn't have to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's up to whoever is working. Right? Touching directly with the universe, touching the universe through something, whatever you want to do. That's what it comes down to. So, in a nutshell, that's what lesson 2 covers, but it also gave us the first 3 exercises that we are supposed to be doing. Exercise 1, which we begin by releasing, let all the energy go out of you. And with our palms, we wish to create that beam of energy. We visualize it in between our hands. And when we get good at that, we move on and then turn it into we do the beam and then we can turn it into the ball of energy. Clear and release when you're finished. When you get good at that, picture the beam of white light. Instead of the beam of white light, the beam of rainbow light. Every color vibrates on its own way, its own wavelength. It affects energy in its own special way. But that is what the purpose of that is. And your regimen at that point should be exercises 1 through 3, which brings us into the spell for lesson 2, which is the practice of manifesting a desire. And the best way to do that, again, I follow the text we already presented in earlier broadcastings of it. But the best thing about manifesting desire is that you actually truly want to believe it. Believe it, ask for it, believe it, receive it, the law of attraction. Then again, there's also the law of resistance. If you attempt to manifest, as the example is if you attempt to manifest a Cadillac, but your mind and you say to yourself, well, that's impossible, that won't happen, or it's like, oh, I can't do this, I'll try it anyway, but I can't do this, well then you won't do it, plain and simple. Like attracts like. If you believe you can, you very well may. It's going to be easier for you. And the god for lesson 2 was the triple goddess, the goddess in her 3 forms, being maiden, mother, and crone. Maiden, the young, virginal goddess, into the mother, the nurturing, creating soul into the crone, where we get the idea of the Halloween witch, the wise woman, the 3 aspects of the goddess. Also in lesson 2 we covered the idea of being born old, which means that when one is born, we sometimes can be born with prior knowledge through our past lives. If one is born old, one has experience beyond your physical age. The veil is thinner for you. Doing magic comes easier. Not that no one cannot practice magic. Everyone has the ability to practice magic, but for those that are born old, the veil is thinner. Therefore, it becomes easier to learn.
Almost like remembering.
Mm.
Yes. So that brings us through our recap of both lesson 1 and lesson 2. I'll extend it to those here to add anything else they'd like to, any questions that they might have, and also to those of you out there, before we sign off here.
I'm glad to be back.
We're glad you're back too, Lexi.
And I'm glad to be back with everyone who's online as well. I've missed this place. I've had a wonderful vacation. I've got a few more days to go, and I will be back here regularly at the museum. And I encourage you to check us out on eBay. Let me just throw that out there at the World of Witches. World of Witches, I believe, on eBay. You can also check out the witchschool.com store as well. Thank you. And thank you for your support to this study group. Please invite your friends, invite everyone that you know. It's a great way to share your beliefs and really congregate and bring a lot of love.